Emma. This is
And
the assistant Kerry.
I'm used to saying, and I'm Kerry.
I know. I just watched the Joyride show. It was really, really good. So if you guys don't know Kerry's show, it's called the Joyride Show, and her and the lovely Tiffany are metaphysical mamas who talk about pretty much everything, I think, right?
We do.
So check it out. I share it on my group as well. If you don't know how to find it, Joyride Show, just type it into Facebook. You're going to find it. They do live Facebook chats, and then you can also find them on YouTube. Just Joyride Show, I think.
Just Joyride Show with the metaphysical moms. Yeah.
There you go. So, so today, Kerry, who do we have today? I'm going to let you announce it because you're from Houston.
I am from Houston. I'm from Houston is how we usually say it, with a Y, Houston. No, I am from Houston, where NASA is a very, very big part of all of our lives. And we today we are talking to Mr. Neil Armstrong.
Woohoo!
Woo-hoo-hoo. So I would like to, first I would like to say hello, and I am just giddy to talk to you, Mr. Armstrong.
He's saying hello. He feels very calm and kind of reserved is what he feels like to me.
He feels sweet. I tuned into him too, and he felt very sweet and almost shy, which I think he actually was pretty shy when it came to this stuff.
He does. His energy is very soft. Mm-hmm. It's not loud at all. And it just feels like you just want to hug him and just sit down and have a nice little chat. And he just also feels very connected to nature. So I don't know if he was a big on fishing or anything like that, but it feels like nature was very important to me or to him. He's saying to me. Sorry, translating it correctly.
You know.
And yeah, I guess he's talking at the same time while I'm thinking. So that sometimes it gets information out weird. So yeah, he's saying, yeah, nature to me was a calming effect. So being in the spotlight was very foreign to me. Being on interviews, I'm pretty sure I don't have to tell anybody just how uncomfortable that was for me, he says. So I loved what I did. I loved the thrill of it, but it was my calm demeanor that allowed me to think properly and accurately, he says, during very stressful events, and that's why they also picked me in NASA
to command the space module or this. Oh, okay. So I would like to start off sounding a little bit awestruck. So my father grew up with Gene Cernan, who was the last man to walk on the moon, and my first boss was Gene's last wife, and so not last. He only had two, but it was. And I understand that he's on that side with you too now. And I just remember I actually got to see the moon rocks. They were stolen from his house, but the moon rocks and the joystick for the moon rover, and to see, I would look at the moon after that and I would think, oh my gosh, he's actually been up there and I've actually met him, which is just such a close thing. And okay, I'll make this quick, but my grandfather put the phone lines into the initial, or the very first control center.
Oh wow!
So, I know. So I'm
Very
all about
cool.
NASA, and so we and you guys were, golly, I mean, you went up there, and when you guys came back, it's funny because you do feel to me very shy, and yet y'all were rock stars. I mean, you truly were rock stars. How did you? Can we start there? I mean, how did you handle that? Just the fame and your families and.
Well, he says, I think for me. Let's go back a little bit, he says. As most of you know, I lost a daughter. And when my little girl passed away, I felt very guilty. I felt like I had passed this on to her genetically, and I took the blame on me. However, I was not a man who processed emotions in a way that most people did. Grieving was very hard for me. It didn't really happen. It was more of a shutdown and replacement with work. And he says, so in a way, NASA for me, applying for the astronaut program, really was a way of escape, of dealing with that. And so when everything happened and you become this, everybody wants to see you and meet you and talk to you, and you become this idealization in people's minds. You become this person that you really are not. It was really hard for me to process the energy and the emotions that people were throwing at me. And I know that sounds a little weird, but you can literally feel people's energy attacking you. They want you to be a certain way. They want you to talk about everything you saw. And we weren't allowed to talk about everything we saw. We weren't allowed to talk about everything that we had experienced. So being secretive and holding information back from people who admired you so much was really uncomfortable for me. And I really tried to shut it out over time, and I tried to hide from it. And so that's what I did for a very, very, very long time.
Well, I see that. I think that was loud. I think to sink into everyday life, and from what I understand, you went back and you taught, and you just put yourself back in the private sector, which to me it feels like it would be such a, okay, I'm grounded, I'm just a human, and I just want to teach and be around people that know me. And so was that part of your choice, not to go out and write a book and go on the tour and do all of these things, but to basically try to slide back into mainstream?
Well, he says, picture this, right after we came back and we did the decontamination process.
3 weeks? You guys were there for 3 weeks?
We were thrown, he says, we were basically thrown into the arms of the world. We had to do sometimes 3 states in one day. We would fly away, fly away, fly away. We went all over the world in like a few weeks. That is some massive traveling. That is some massive energy that gets thrown at you. And that was very intimidating for me. So for me, stepping away from NASA was not an easy choice. It was a very difficult choice, but I could no longer handle, people look at you like you're the only one who did this. There were 20,000 people working that day trying to get us to the moon and back. Where was the credit for them? I didn't like the fact that I was put on this pedestal and I was just seen as the one person who did it. I wanted to share that with everyone. I wanted everyone to get equal credit for what happened. And that wasn't the case. And I was, in a way, trying to step away from that, from that role. I didn't want to be the one person who was admired for it. I wanted everybody to have equal. So I figured if I take myself out of the equation, then the attention will start being divided over all the people in NASA. That's how I kind of saw it. So stepping away and going back home, he says, I went back to Ohio. I went back home and really stepping out of the spotlight. I mean, you can never step completely out of the spotlight. I became a teacher and everybody knows what I did. So, you never fully step out of it. But I weaned off trying to do interviews. I mean, I had so many requests and so many, I basically said no to everything. I eventually had to say no to giving out autographs because I felt like, people are making money off of me and I don't think I deserved all the credit, So there was eventually this admiration for me turned into disgust towards it. I wanted to step away. I wanted to push it away. I wanted to hide from it. as much as I could. And so I'm going to admit, he says I was a workaholic. That was my hiding, was constantly being busy, being busy, being busy. And so going back home and in a way hiding, I had a farm, he says, where I had some privacy, because there's no more privacy. You step on the moon, guess what? All your privacy goes out the door. And was it what I wanted to do? Let me tell you this. No, I missed the kick of the discovery. I loved discovering things. I loved evolution. I loved how humanity is pushed into directions that, within the next 10 years, we're going to be like, wow, how did we ever do that? I love the fact that we can be driven into these dreams and ideas and over time create them into reality, while so many years earlier nobody thought it was possible. I love the fact that we can challenge our own universe and we can challenge ourselves to create the impossible. That's what I love about what I did. That's why I became a test pilot. That's why I did all of the things that people seemed impossible to do. And that's why I was also disappointed in NASA that a lot of stuff stopped happening.
So do you mind if we go back for a minute? It is because I understand that you became a pilot when you were 16 years old. And so you grew up with your eyeballs to the sky. And I think coming from a family of pilots myself, I know that that's just in your blood, and you have to do it. And then you were a test pilot. I know you went to college for 2 years on a scholarship, and you were with the Navy, and oh my goodness, these guys like hurl themselves off of a ship, and then they have something that catches them as they come by. And that just, to me, is just nuts, but it's incredible. And just the adrenaline junkie, which cracks me up because you're so quiet, and you just have to be, that adrenaline, I'm sure, is just a drug in itself. And then you flew, in Korea, you flew how many? 78? I think it was 78. I can't say the word. You have to edit this part out.
Missions.
Thank you. Yes. And I was astounded by that.
Edit it out. Your stuttering is charming. We have to accept people for who they are, sweetheart.
Well, thank you, darling. Mm-hmm. But that was, and for me, that was incredible. And then you came back and you went to school, and then you finished, and then you became a test pilot. And I don't know if I read this right, but I read somewhere that you flew, and my dad said, yes, my dad, who is military and pilot and all stuff, an aircraft that went 4,000 miles an hour. I mean, that's insane. And I just can't imagine. And then you went to work for NASA, but it wasn't called NASA. It was NACA, N-A-C-A. Is that right? Anyway, and everybody's wanting us to go directly to I just wanted to do some background and kind of give everybody a feel for who you were, you still are. And so you were just a pilot through and through, and an adrenaline junkie through and through. And for me, thinking of you, I've done the background tour of the Johnson Space Center, and when I see you literally were in a tin can with a rocket strapped to your bottom that hurled you up into space. I mean, to me, the fact that even left our orbit was phenomenal. I mean, did you ever stop? And I mean, were you ever afraid? Were you ever thinking, how in the world with a slide ruler? I mean, we didn't even have computers back then, and there you guys are. So I guess the question would be, how did you come to a place where that was a possibility for you?
Well, first of all, let me just explain that I had no fear.
Yeah.
Because I really lived in the moment. I was kind of a person who said, don't worry about it if it hasn't happened yet. That was my motto. That's how I lived my life. And see, my interest for flying started when I was really, really little. And it wasn't passed on from family to family on my side, he says. My father took me up in an airplane, he's showing me he was very young. Looking at what he's showing me, I would probably say between 2 and 4 years old, something like that.
Oh, little.
And he said, I loved every minute of it, looking out the window. And this was the beginning time of commercial flights and all of that. And it really was just to have people get a taste of what flying is about. So it was a very small airplane, but there were some people in there, and my dad hated it. He was sick the whole time, and I couldn't keep my eyes off the sky, looking out the window. So I loved it. And so it started from there. I became obsessed with airplanes. Every time I saw one, I would point at it, airplane, there's an airplane. So my obsession started really young. And I started to realize that obsession wasn't an obsession. It was really just a way of living. It was part of who I was. And it was part of my journey. So I figured it out at a really early age. But yes, was I a daredevil? 100%. Yes. Did I get a kick out of it? Absolutely. But it was more for me for the joy of it, of pushing my own limitations, of pushing the limitations of the aircraft, than it really was for the kick itself. It wasn't so much for the adrenaline rush. It was more of accomplishment. And like I said, fear was non-existent. I taught that to my children too. I taught that to Janet. He says, why worry if it hasn't happened yet? I was like that. And even when things went wrong, I remember in Korea, he's showing me, let's see, what am I looking at? Okay, so it looks like he went down to drop a bomb on a bridge. And it looks like part of his wing got stuck in some wires or something. I'm not really sure. But it looks like his wing was damaged. So, in those moments when most people will panic and fear for their life, I always had this, and I don't know how to explain it, but it's more like a sensation of peace and tranquility. It's like the whole world around me stopped, and I was in this vacuum where everything was calm, and I could shut my emotions down and completely go, hold on, what's going on? In order for me to get this, I have to do this, this, and this, and this, and this. I would calculate in my mind what the best option was and what to do in order to get the result that I needed to do. Most people get overloaded by emotions and fears and the energy of the event that's happening. I don't know if that makes sense to you, Kerry, he says, but I could shut that down, and I became into this emptiness. And that's why I was so good as a test pilot.
Well, sports, like they say that when a pro basketball player throws, it's almost like time stands still and you're in slow-mo. So in a sense, you can almost stop time, even though everything happens that fast, but you can stop time and your brain is going boom, there it is. And then time starts back again. Is that what it's almost like this?
Yes, it's like time fades away, the location fades away, and you're just there in that moment trying to figure out what's going on. Now, what I know now, what I didn't know back then, what I know now is that you have a spiritual team. I had a few angels around me. They literally freeze time for you, so you can figure out what to do, because it wasn't my time to go and I needed to do a lot more. And so at that moment, I realized that, there is something bigger out there that's providing us with whatever it is that we need in that moment. And for me, whenever, we'll just say it the way Eric might say it, whenever shit hits the fan, that was my time where I could just say, stop, freeze, think. Those were my 3 words that went through my head, and then I would figure it out, and so that was my biggest strength.
Your superpower.
That was my superpower in order to get things done, in order to be part of the evolution of aviation, and of, space, the exploration of space. He says, that was why I was here. That was my biggest journey. And yes, I had a beautiful family, and I had people that I loved, that loved me. But unfortunately, my biggest mission was without them.
Don't you think, though, that in a sense that is, they anchored you to this planet? Don't you think that half of your soul or half of your being really craved that human experience? Otherwise, it seems like you would almost be amputated with just the spaceman flyboy, that you needed to be grounded as well. And look at the genetics you passed on. Look at the evolution that you created just with your family.
I think for me, my family, well, of course, I passed on knowledge and information, and he says my beautiful looks to my boys. He's laughing. I've never seen him laugh before. It's kind of funny. But he says, my family was my support. It was the only place where I could come home. And I know that might sound a little weird, he says, and it might sound a little negative, but I could find control in my family. While everybody else was out of my control, their reactions, their obsession with me, my family was under control. And I know it's not negative. It really isn't negative, but it was a place where I was safe, and it was a place where I was loved, and it was a place where I wasn't questioned about everything. So it was for me a grounding, like an anchor for me to stay in my human life. Because if I didn't have that, if I didn't have my family, if I didn't have because I love my children very much, if I didn't have my children, I would have pushed my boundary to a point where I would have probably not survived. That pushing boundaries went into the extreme, but I always had my family in the back of my mind. I need to be there for them. I need to provide for them. So in a way, that tempered my urge to push and push and push until there was no more to push. If that makes any sense, he says.
No, it absolutely does. I think that children, I watch my husband, who is just a phenomenal man, and then I laugh because at home he's in his boxers making pancakes, and the kids are giving him a hard time, and it's just very, oh yes, I am human. Oh yeah, okay, no more ego. I mean, it's like they tend to do that, but yes, you were so controlled. I mean, I think that's part of your training is you had to train for any eventuality, because you're up in space. You don't have someone that can come and rescue you. And so it is which leads me to my next question. So I did not realize that you piloted the vehicle the first time two vehicles successfully docked in space. And apparently you guys ran into some problems, and you had to cut it short. But that, I mean, just
spinning. They were spinning out of control.
How did you not throw up? I mean, that's just that's neither here nor there, but that's incredible. You might have, but
he says you don't want to know that.
I'm okay. I can see it. No, it is. But that, I mean, now they do it. I mean, they dock with the International Space Station all the time, and I'm always amazed at how they can and I mean, that is just life-changing.
It's millimeter work, they really have to get it right.
And you didn't have the joystick that went like we do now. I mean, slide ruler.
And now there's a lot of automatic pilot that comes into place. We didn't have that. And so, yeah, we started spinning out of control. I remember the medics discussing how we were doing, because he says there was another pilot, or there was somebody next to him, and he was starting to pass out. He said, for me, I was getting very close to that point, but like I said, went back into my little zone, thought about it and how to do it. And he says he kind of counter steered with like thrusters of some sort, and that was just only so like air that flows out or something. And so that's how he kind of got it back under control. But he was pretty close, he says. They were both very close in passing out. But so it's that calmness when you can control your heart rate, which I was able to do. Not a lot of people have control over their heart rate. I had the ability, my little superpower of being able to control my breath and my heart rate from, not going all crazy. And that's what, saved us. And because I don't think we would have come back after we passed out. That would have been it.
That would have been it. Well, okay. So now we're going to move on to the moon landing. But can I ask you the question that everybody, and I would like to preface this with where this is coming from, because it's a credible source. It's not just people thinking, oh, it wasn't real. And I know you must have heard that a bunch of times. And of course, UFOs, and which me personally, I've seen 2 craft, and I'm always amazed, and I've connected. So they're up there. I mean, it's insanely crazy to think that they're not. But what happened was there was a man, Dr. Greer, who I believe you probably know or know of, and he put together this group of high-ranking officers, some of the astronauts, I mean, just all of these different people that have come back and said, oh yes, there are absolutely, and the government knows, NASA knows, everybody knows, and they will release these different documents, but everything's been redacted or marked out. And but there was one fella in particular, and he is it was a man that was an engineer, and his name is Ken Johnston, and he was a NASA employee. He was a Boeing engineer, test pilot, F4 pilot. He worked as the chief lunar, there we go, test pilot at the Manned Spacecraft Center in Houston. And this is the quote. While Neil and Buzz were on the lunar surface, Neil switched to the medical channel, and he spoke directly with the chief officer, the doctor, saying, they're here, they're parked on the side of the crater, and they are watching us. And so, and apparently there were ham operators that picked this up. And so, which I find amazing that they somehow could intercept that. But first of all, is it true? You're turning.
He's saying, yeah. He's saying that, okay, he just wants to let people know that he will be revealing certain things, but he can't reveal all, because he's saying it's not the right time for people to know everything yet. We don't want to mess with the way that things are supposed to go. Okay, so
you're right.
He's saying, did we encounter an alien communication? He's saying, yes, we were being watched. Was there really a communication between us and them? No, there was no communication. However, it started even before we landed. That was not the first time that we noticed them around. So it started while we were just in space going towards the moon. We noticed that there were what looked to us like big bright lights following us around. A little bit like, how it's really dark and you have a car that's following you around with this big light, like bright lights on, and all you see is the big lights. That's right. Kind of what it looks like. And they just kept following us around. And so The first time we noticed it, we tried to verify that it wasn't something from the lunar rocket, that it wasn't a debris of something and light was hitting it. So we tried to verify if they were picking up on anything in Houston, and they were not. So we noticed that, you know, they would just kind of guide us. It wasn't more like, it wasn't like they were trying to scare us off. They were just kind of following along to, I guess, to see what we were going to do, or where we were going to go, or, you know, who are these people? That's kind of what it felt like. It felt like they were just observing. It didn't feel we didn't feel threatened, but it was kind of fun for me. I thought it was fun. I mean, Buzz was freaking out. Sorry, Buzz, I have to tell.
He's come forth with a lot of information.
You know, for me, staying calm in my situation, you know, that's just who I was. I was just observing them as much as they were observing me. So once we landed, and yes, people, we did land. I will explain in a bit, okay? He says, because there's so many people out there who are like, they never landed. Well, we did. Once we landed, it was very quickly, it became very quickly clear to us that we were not alone there. We could also see certain shapes and forms that didn't really look like it was part of the scenery. So, did they land very close to us? Yes, they did. It was on the left side of us. Did we see anybody come out of the ship? No. They just kind of landed and stayed there. And they were just keeping an eye on us and what we were doing, or why we were there, I think. And that was it. So, and now we weren't the only ones. The other Apollo missions saw them. They were, let's just say that contact became a little bit more closer as the Apollo missions went on, until we got to a point where basically we were told to stay away from the moon. Basically what happened. I guess we weren't ready for it, or they didn't want us to interfere with their stations, because that's what they were. I know that now. They were stations on the moon, and they're not where people live. There's no, or where species live. It's not a home to some species. They're basically pit stops. It's kind of like a gas station. They stop, they refuel, they're really just like stations where they can reside for a short amount of time, where they can get a perspective on certain things. That's really what it is. They're just temporary stations.
So it's been my understanding, and this is going way far out there. No, I don't know if this is under the we can't talk about category, but it's been my understanding that that is what happened with Buzz Aldrin almost 2 years ago now, that from the Antarctic, they can get to the moon in less than half an hour, and that he passed out, and that he couldn't handle it. And so that it is actually, that the moon is actually a place where we go, we stop, and then we go out to other places. Do you have anything to say about that?
It's just, yeah, it's just, I guess it's just it's just, yeah, there's no energy forces around the moon that creates wormholes where they can just go and move forward like that. It is really, I mean, their ships are very, very, very developed. So they, and I think, let me explain something, because I think a lot of people, I didn't know that back then, and I think a lot of people don't know that now. But let me explain why, that's something that I learned while I came home. Why spaceships or ships from other species can move so fast. A lot of people don't understand, how is it possible to go boom, boom, and you're in another place. Basically, what the more advanced races understand is that they don't need to relocate themselves. They don't need to do distance to get from point A to point B. They understand that they are just staying in point A. They never move. What they do is they change the frequency of the surroundings. They change the frequency of the reality around them. And that's why they can just disappear like that. That's why they, 1 minute they're there, boom, the next minute they're gone. That's how they transport themselves. People think that, you know, when they go, people who have seen them, who have encountered them, who have had abductions, they see them and poof, they're in another place the next second. That's because they don't even move you. They understand that the reality that we are seeing around us right now is a frequency. It is a projection, kind of like a TV show, right? We want to see a TV show, and we turn on the TV and we'll switch it to the frequency that has our TV show. Our life is a TV show. They understand that they can change that TV show, right? Just by clicking the frequency, by changing the frequency. And that is how they move around. That is how they move their own bodies from place to place. And that's how they can just appear in your bedroom and take you away in a second and put you back right there, and it won't even feel like you did anything. It's all instant because there's just a manipulation of the energy of the reality around you. That's really how they move. Where was I going with this?
Well, we were talking about the moon, and we're talking about Buzz Aldrin going to the moon, but that speaks to Corey Goode. Oftentimes he talks about the ships, and I've heard this actually from multiple places, that the ships, that they're integrated with the pilots, that it's more like I could sit in the ship, it wouldn't turn on, but the person that is attuned to the frequency of the ship could sit and turn it on and they go. And so that actually speaks to that. And did you know this after you crossed, or did you know this prior to crossing?
I didn't figure that out till after I crossed, after I transitioned home. Let me tell you this, we know a lot more about how they work now than what they're telling us, than what they want people to believe. So let me explain something. He says, okay, so a lot of people wonder whether or not we really stepped foot on the moon. And like I said, the answer is yes. And they are trying to figure out how that happened and why we can't do it now anymore. Okay, because there's a lot of contradictive information out there. A lot of the new astronauts don't know all the details either. A lot of things were hidden from the people that are in space right now. So they have no clue how everything happened. All they know is not to ask questions. That's what they know. That's what they are being told. But let me give you a little bit of a scoop. So basically, what most people are worried about, or what they're thinking about, is how could we, with the technology that we had at that time, go through the Van Allen belt, not die of radiation poisoning, and get to the moon, because you have to get through it. Okay? Now, it's really simple, but it's really secretive. So I'm going to give you the scoop. He says, I couldn't talk about it forever and ever, so I'm happy I get to talk about it now and not be attacked by it. Basically, there was a little incident called Roswell. And what they discovered there was a lot of material. That ship that was crashed had a lot of materials that was very unknown to us, that we didn't quite understand. But we tested it and tested it and tested it and knew exactly, okay, it can handle radiation, it can handle heat, it can handle, it's very solid. And although it looked like aluminum foil, it looked very thin, okay? The products that they used were very light. It was, it looked like aluminum foil, kind of, he's showing me like wavy, like it was very flexible. Mm-hmm. So what they did was, after testing it, and after doing all these experiments on it, they knew they needed something to get through that belt. They knew about it. They knew the risks of it. They knew it was impossible to get through. But after testing these materials, they basically integrated them into the ship, into the module, but also into our suits. And so what might have looked to people like it was just kind of an aluminum kind of thing, and that was what was said. It was made out of aluminum. We gave them everybody, the how it was built was given to people, the information that people could relate to. Oh, it's metal and it's aluminum and it's this and it's that. But really, they were materials that we couldn't identify. All we knew is how strong they were and what they were capable of doing. So that was integrated into the Apollo missions. Okay. There was also, on top of that, there was an energy source that creates a field, kind of like an energy field, which they knew how to operate. However, they didn't understand what fueled it. So all of that integrated in the ship. He's calling it, I don't know, the lunar module. I don't remember if that was the right name, but he's giving it lunar modules, but he's saying that is what got us to the moon. That is what got us through the belt. But that information could not be released because Roswell wasn't saying, yeah, aliens, they crashed and, we used all their technology. The problem was after so many trips, reusing the same materials, a lot of stuff was reused. We started, getting short on stuff. And on top of that, he's showing me what is that? The power source of the thing that created the field started to die out. And since they had no idea what was feeding the power source, how to imitate it, and that's what they're trying to do now. They are trying to rebuild what we had.
Reverse engineering.
Yeah, they're trying to rebuild. And that's why a lot of, or some astronauts will say, well, we had the technology, but it kind of got disappeared or it was destroyed. It was never destroyed. It basically broke down and we didn't know how to reactivate it. That's basically what happens. So we use materials from the Roswell crash, we integrated it into our Apollo missions, and over time, basically the stuff we used started either dying off or we didn't have enough anymore. And until that day, we're still trying to rebuild it. We're still trying to recreate, because they still have pieces of it. They're still trying to recreate it and imitate it. But to this point, it still hasn't worked. They're still working on it. So people, that's what really happens.
That's
now,
what really
he's saying the videos, on the other hand, were pre-recorded.
So it was pre-recorded.
The videos are pre-recorded because, first of all, we didn't know whether or not the video would even work, the signal would go that far. Second of all, we didn't know what we were going to encounter. And if we would have just filmed getting out and there was someone or something in front of us, we had no control over what the public was going to see. So we wanted, only a few people knew about this, okay? Very small amount of people were aware of the videos and everything being pre-recorded. So not half of the people at NASA that were there that day did not know, okay? This very small need-to-know basis kind of thing. But it was basically the president who decided that certain information needed to be controlled because we weren't sure what we were going to find there. And so because there is an insecurity and an uncertainty of what was going to be there once we landed, they decided to recreate it and show the people what was controlled, show the people what was what it would have looked like. The recording, however, as we're speaking, that was real. So the recording was real. The images, the footage that people saw was pre-recorded.
That's fascinating. And that makes sense because NASA is a very controlled, and if you all of a sudden, boom, guess what? We have alien Ted up there. That would have created a panic. So thank you for that. So both were right. Yes, they were there. yes, it's real. Yes, but then yes, we also videoed. That I find that fascinating. And when you're going back to the topic of secrecy and aliens, and so there is the secret space program, which was sort of up and going at that point. And there were some pretty sinister things that kind of came from there. Did you know about that at the time, or do you know about that now?
Let's just say that everything was a need to know basis. So what I'm revealing now, half of it I didn't even know myself. I did not know they used certain technology from an alien spacecraft. I was not involved in, how things were made. All we needed to know is how to get there, how to fly the damn thing. That was it. So even that was, even that was not, revealed to us. We figured it out, of course, over time, but everything was on a need to know basis. So he's also saying that after the landing, a lot of things that happened afterwards, I wanted to not know, because I was tired of being told what we can say, what we can't say, having to think about everything that comes out of your mouth. It becomes a very unnatural conversation when you have to shape and form your words according to the law book of NASA and the government. So anything that happened afterwards, I tried to not involve myself.
Well, and it seems like there are quite a few now that have come out, like Dr. Mitchell and Buzz Aldrin, that have come out saying, yes, there are things that go on. Yes. I mean, they seem, and I don't know if they're just older and they just don't care, or if they feel like it's time to know, but it's, I also understand that the Russians called for an investigation. I'm not sure when they did that, but they wanted to know if it was true. I guess there was really a race going on, and they wanted to know, I guess, if they were actually the ones that went first. That's funny.
They did want to disprove, and to this day that they still weren't able to disprove it, because they know that we did.
You did.
They know more than what they're claiming. But yeah, this was really, this was, when you look at it from that time perspective, this was, it was capitalism versus communism. It was freedom versus dictatorship. So there was this massive race between America and Russia. And the race to the moon really was a power display. That's really what it was. Look how powerful we are. Look what we can do. Look how smart we are. We got to figure something out that you didn't. It really was an intimidation thing, to try and show off towards each other. And for me, I mean, I really didn't, like I said, I stayed out of all of that politics, and I just wanted to see what we could do. I just wanted to see, like, what is out there. And that was my drive behind everything that I did, was what can we discover? I wanted evolution, and I felt that very strongly in me. Evolution was why I was here. I was here to push boundaries. I was here to take humanity and take them to the next step, and I felt that very strongly. And so,
well, we have a question. What were your thoughts on aliens prior to the moon? To knowing what you saw? Did you always, well, what were your thoughts on that? Did you believe in them, UFOs? Had you ever seen one?
I always was very sober in that. I knew that it was impossible for us to be alone. I was very convinced about that. Once I encountered them, I kind of had this idea that, I would do the same thing. I would see, hey, what are you doing, and where are you going? I kind of felt related to the way that they were acting. I didn't feel afraid. I didn't feel like, oh my God, they're really here. I didn't have that response. It was more like, look at them go. Okay, they're following us. Well, I would do the same. you know. So I kind of felt related to their thinking in that aspect. But at the same time, you're cautious, not fearful, but cautious because you don't know what you're dealing with, and you don't know who they are, and you don't know their technology or their capability. I mean, they could have just fired something off and we'd be blown into smithereens, you know. So there is a caution from me, but I always believed that there was something bigger and there was more out there than what we could see. So I was very open-minded to discover them in a way. I was very anxious and kind of excited about discovering other life. While he's saying Collins was kind of like, oh my God. He was more fearful towards it. Buzz was all over the place. Oh my God, they're here. I can see them. Me, I was just like excited to meet them in a way. Now, when I look at him now, you know, from my new perspective, I understand that they are us and we are them. So we're all the same. We're just curious about the different ways of life. We're curious about the different realities that we're creating for ourselves. So I relate to them now as they're us and we're them and we're one and we're all connected. That's how I see it now.
So were you ever contacted after the moon? Have you ever been in actual contact with an ET?
He's saying no.
No. Okay. And then can you tell me, do you have any, now we're just going to go to the Q&A section. What film, okay, so Mars, the one with Matt Damon, I could watch that 25,000 times. In a crisis, he's good to go. He's just going to science the shit out of this, quote unquote. What movie best depicts the reality of space and all that is NASA?
He's saying, oh, wow. I never really watched a lot of movies. I don't think it was part of my interests. He's saying, it looks like he's going through archives of some sort. He's just kind of like, chum, chum,
Yes, I can see it.
Can you see it? He's just like flipping. It's almost like looking through a magazine. Hold on.
I caught him without an answer.
He's saying, okay, so there is one. Okay, so he's commenting on the one that you said.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying that one is very close to reality, to how it would be to try and establish some form of being able to survive there. I don't think I've ever seen that movie, but he's talking about, you know, it's about survival and it's about making a planet habitable for humans. He's saying, you know, whoever made the movie did their research on the biology and the chemistry and all of that needs to be done. So that one would be very close to what they're going to need to do once they get there. And they will get there, he says. They will get there.
They might already be there, but hey, who am I?
There is one with Sandra Bullock.
Yes, I knew that. Yes.
He's not giving me the title, but maybe people can write it down in the comments.
One with George Clooney and Sandra Bullock, and she's a teacher.
And he's talking about how the emptiness, the quietness, the
vacuum,
the way that they portray it is very, very real. And he also says, you know what's cool about space? And he says certain movies discuss that or portray that, is that there is no more time there. Time disappears. And depending on the gravity, I don't know anything about space, but he's showing me like the pull of the earth or the pull of the planets. It's something to do with gravity. Depending on the gravity determines how fast the body ages or something like that. And he's saying the lack of time makes you feel very connected to source, because that's how it is in the other realms. There is no time. And so alien species know that there is no time. And so they can go, they can be in our current time, in your linear current time right now, and in an hour, they can go and visit the dinosaur age. They have that figured out, because it's not about reality. Okay, your reality is an illusion. It's about frequency. It's about tuning yourself into the frequency. So for them, when they look at humanity, and I wanted to share that really quickly, he says, when I look at them now, and I communicate with them sometimes, the way they look at our reality, at humanity, we just see the current state of being. They see the whole time frame. They see everything that we've been through, what we've done to each other, and that scares them. It scares them to see that we're still so immature in the way that he's showing approach. He's walking. To me, that's approach. In the way that we approach each other as individuals, as entities, as spiritual beings. The way that we take care of ourselves, the way that we attack ourselves, the way that we fight and destroy and create death within our own species, that really frightens them. So that's why they keep a very close eye on us, because they want to make sure that we're growing, that we're evolving to a more enlightened state of mind, so we are ready to handle a new way of perceiving our current reality. Because the way that we're perceiving our reality now, over time, will be replaced with a better understanding of there is no reality. There's only what you're projecting.
The way, I could talk to you for hours. The way I have viewed, I had to put time in a context, and the way my guides gave it to me is, if I'm flying from Houston to South Africa and I need to speak with Emma in Belgium and a girlfriend of mine in Australia, they have to, and I'm up above time, basically, because I'm in the ship, I'm in this airplane. I'm without time, because I'm hopping between time zones. And so they are, it could be 7 o'clock, it could be 12 o'clock on 2 different days, yet I'm up here in no time. And so that's how I was able to understand the concept of, when you come into our atmosphere, you come into time. And I recently, well, maybe not recently, but someone has said somewhere, I don't know who, that for an ET, that they can, like, coming in to our reality at this specific time, that it's not only that they have to locate that, like if they needed to find you, it's not just finding you in Belgium, but they needed to find you in Belgium on the timeline. Right. So it's the effectiveness of it. It's effectively, it's getting a CD, a DVD player, and finding exactly the actor you want in the middle, like where on the disc is she? And so, and I just find that fascinating, because that's when the reality of reality comes into play. And I love that. Oh my gosh. So I love that we're pondering all these fabulous, and that movie with Matt Damon is called The Martian, not Mars. It's called The Martian, and it was Ridley Scott. And it was, anyway, basically Ridley Scott. So yes, they said that they did a tremendous amount of research on that. That is Emma, highly recommend it. So I know that there is a lot more that we could talk about. One, Lisa Estal said, can you tell anything about Stanley Kubrick and his alleged films of the moon landing? And what do you do on the other side? And who do you socialize with? Okay, so I think we've answered the video, the movie one, but what do you do on the other side? Are you doing research? What is your job?
Well, I'm still very much involved in helping astronauts and helping scientists to try and get us to explore more space and get us to communicate. I'm kind of I help different species to communicate with certain people on Earth in order to establish an alliance, to keep that alliance going. So I'm all about guiding and teaching and connecting space to Earth.
Oh,
To this day. Yeah.
okay, so who do you hang out with on the other side? Your buddies.
I'm still pretty much a loner over here. So yeah, that hasn't changed much. The thing is, we don't, yeah, we hang out, but it's not the way that humans would like to see it, because we no longer need to physically come together. We're always connected with everyone. So whenever we need some advice, or whenever we want to experience something that might help us with our jobs. For example, if I try to guide an astronaut to try something new or to stay calm in a certain situation, but I'm not quite 100% sure on how to help that person the best, I might call in some other astronauts or some other scientists. I merge with their energy. We become one. I claim in some way or form, I absorb that knowledge from their energy, and then I can use that to help this new entity. So that's really how hanging out is. I know people and spirits will try and picture it. Yeah, we're around the campfire singing Kumbaya. And we do that so people get, it's really hard for people to understand that you're no longer an individual, that you're part of something bigger. But the reality is, we merge together energetically instead of hang out to specific consciousness, because the characters that we play on Earth, the different roles that we have, are really just a part of something bigger, of a bigger whole that you are. And so we don't just say, hey, Einstein, come out here, but we will merge with their frequency, or we will reach out on a frequency basis if we feel that they can help us. And so that consciousness will be released, will merge with me. I gain knowledge and understanding in certain aspects, and then I go and merge with the astronaut that's on Earth. And that's kind of how it works. I know that's hard for people to wrap their heads around.
No. I see. It's almost like a vacuum. Like you come in, you get what you need, then you pull out. It's like you go to the library, you read, you take the knowledge with you, and you apply it. Okay, then this is another.
Like everybody's your best friend. Everybody's your mom. Everybody's your dad. Everybody's your family. And so we know and understand and feel and experience that we're all one. We're all part of the same whole. There is no separation. There is no individuality. We function on a global, massive wholeness scale. So it's really different. Sometimes we do want to kind of feel the individuality, and we'll recreate certain things. We can do that just to experience it a bit. But as Neil, he says, I never really felt like I was an individual. I always felt like I was part of something bigger, and that I was being guided to do certain things. So from my human perspective, I felt out of sorts. I felt like I didn't quite belong into the whole, how humans experience the reality. So, I don't know how to explain it, he says, but yeah, I don't feel alone. There's no loneliness up here. But I don't feel the need that I need to pick out individuals and say, hey, can you come over and hang out? Or can you come over and hang out?
Cernan? Yeah. Exactly. Well, thank you for that. I find that interesting. Okay, so are there any stations on the dark side of the moon?
Yes.
Okay, I think that goes back to what we were talking about. Okay, because I think it's almost like a UN spot where different places, it is just a gas station or or a way station. So it's another one. And I think this is great because every time I see pictures of Earth or the moon, you never see stars. So, Ghislaine Boyven, I hope I did not kill your name. To Neil Armstrong, why do you say you couldn't recall seeing any stars from the moon at the one and only press conference you held after returning to Earth? No way there were no stars to be seen from the moon's surface.
Okay. He says, all right, I admit when the question was offered to me, like I said, I wasn't very good with interviews. And I didn't quite know what I could say and what I couldn't say. So I didn't quite explain this very well. But he says, and any photographer will be able to explain it to you. So when we photographed the moon, which really was the brightest thing in the picture, right? Mm-hmm. Why? Because the light reflects on the surface of the moon. That reflects the light up. And it kind of goes into your visor. So you see, he says, when we took pictures, all you could see was the moon surface, and you couldn't see the stars in the sky. So the moon has what? He's showing me an albino, but I don't think that's
like a glow, maybe like a white glow.
No, he calls it albedo. I don't know what that means, but maybe some people will know. He says the moon has an albedo of 0.12.
Oh.
You know, or the other way you can say it is, he says it reflects 12% of the light that strikes it. And he's saying, now, no, that might not seem like a lot. It might not seem like that's very bright. Because, you know, there are brighter objects out there in the solar system, right? You got the stars and you got the planets and all of that. But when you're standing on the surface of the moon and that reflected sunlight is bouncing back up into your camera and into your visors that then reflects into your eyes. I mean, basically you get blinded by the light, okay? Your pupils and the lens only focuses on what is the brightest. And everything in the background fades. So it's optical illusion that there are no stars, but it's basically your eyes can only focus on what's right in front of you and what is really bright. So the eyes pupils go really, really small, and it can't process the information that's in the back. And that's really what's going on. So because the lights are reflecting, you're kind of half blinded. Yeah, you're like working on the moon, you're half blinded. It's really bright up there. And that's why you can't see the stars. He says, I'm going to advise everyone, go to the live YouTube feed of the space station. They are circling around Earth, and you will see that the Earth is super bright, okay? The light that reflects on the Earth goes back into the camera, and it looks like our Earth is like a big light bulb. And you will notice that when you look at the black parts around it, you cannot see the stars because the camera can only, it's either one or the other. Right. Now, when we were in the cabin, when we were inside where there is no lights inside, okay? When that was darker, then you could see the moons. When there is nothing reflecting upon you, you can see the stars, he says. You can see the stars. But when you're on a surface that is so bright and reflective, you just can't see the stars. Your eyes can't register it, and the cameras can't register it either.
See, you are forever the teacher. So one more question. Are you planning to reincarnate anytime soon?
Oh, I am incarnated, a little bit all over the place, he says.
Okay.
A little bit all over. I have a few incarnations in this current time frame.
And they were here when you were here on Earth?
No, they came after I crossed over. They're still very young, very willing to change the world. So they're gonna make some noise.
Well, sir, it has just been incredible. It has been incredible. I could take 2 astronauts, not just one.
He's saying, thank you for allowing me to speak, and maybe we can do this again, because I actually had a lot of fun with you guys. It's a lot different from this point of view, where you no longer are worried about saying the wrong thing.
Well, that has a lot of impact, I think. I mean, when you're worried about harming yourself and your children by information that is stored in your head, that is daunting, I would imagine. Well, thank you so much, and everybody keep looking up at that moon. It's beautiful.
Yeah. He's saying our future is out there. We're not there yet, but we will get there. So keep supporting our astronauts, and just visualize how we're going to encounter so many species in the future.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. He's saying thank you. I love you guys. For me, from Kerry, thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe, share, and we'll see you guys later. Bye.